beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. Within this video I'll be sharing a recipe for a tried and tested recipe that came directly from Lallemands for a very good hazy IPA that works just great with Pomona yeast. Within this video I'll be not only sharing the recipe but also my methods from start to finish for brewing and fermenting this one. Then I will finish off with a look at and my tasting notes for the resulting beer. So let's get started. Let's start as always with a look at this recipe's vital statistics. As you can see, the recipe offers an approximate ABV of 6.6%, which falls a little lower than average for the style. The BU-GU ratio shows the relationship between the bitterness and alcohol at 0.41, making this one very easy drinking despite the ABV, making this one rather on the dangerous side if you follow your taste buds. This recipe has gone through various stages of development and tweaking to reach its current state, which gets my full approval, so please do brew with confidence. The resulting beer is very good. You will see my tasting notes at the end of the video. The recipe can be found in full within the video's description, which is underneath the video window when viewed on a desktop computer. You will also find a link there to the full recipe on Brewhouse, which can be used free of charge with some restrictions. I strongly suggest that you fully convert the recipe before ordering in your ingredients so that you're actually brewing the recipe as intended. I also suggest that you brew this recipe as is the first time rather than tweaking it, as tweaks are already in place to bring this recipe into a very good shape. I have an easy guide to recipe conversion using Brewhouse on my channel as shown on screen now. Within this video this recipe is being brewed using a Brewzilla 65 litre brewing system to the volume of 20 litres or 5.28 US LQD gallons, but as part of the conversion process this can be shaped and scaled to suit your own brewing system and volume requirements. Shown on screen is the water profile that I recommend for using with this recipe. This hoppy profile is ideal for this beer. We want to accentuate the hop qualities. Using the right water profile is very important. After all, beer is mostly water and its balance is vital so that it suits the beer that you are brewing. Naturally, this water profile is just one way to go here. If you have a different profile that you really enjoy, then certainly go with that. Brewhouse also has very good documentation on how to use the software to make the necessary water changes too. This makes the whole process very easy, so as such I suggest that all brewers, irrespective of experience, start treating their water as soon as possible for the very best of end results. You may well be surprised how easy it actually is. Let's now get into the brew, which starts with the mashing phase. Here I have added our wash water, which is preheated to the first mash step's temperature before the grain is then added and stirred in. The stirring in of your grain is a very important step as the result will impact the rest of the brew. For this reason I personally use a mixing tool made by Heath to quickly yet effectively ensure that every grain is wet and that there are no clumps. This mixing tool is made from stainless steel, which is vital. Do note that using concrete mixers that are made of other metals that are not food safe is certainly not recommended at all. Here is the mash schedule for this one, which is pretty typical for this type of beer style. I suggest that you perform both steps for the best and easiest outcome brew-wise. Let's now start the mash and look at the fermentables that we are mashing with this one. Here we have two base malts, Pale Ale and Pilsner malt, which will offer a fairly blank canvas for flavour between them. The flaked oats will add a creamy-like effect that some will describe as a silky mouthfeel, which gives us a very smooth drinking experience. The flaked wheat will add in a little of its characteristic flavour, plus it will also add in some extra body and foam stability in the end beer. Both of these flaked additions will also contribute to the end haze within the final beer too. After both mash steps, the conversion process from starch to sugar is complete and denatured, and due to the higher temperature of mash out, our grain bread is ready for sparging, which I prefer to do manually by hand. Next up we have the boil phase. This recipe came to me with a 60-minute boil, but I have adapted it to a modern 30-minute boil with no hop changes needed. Feel free, of course, if you wish to boil this for 60 minutes. You can see in the top right of the screen that initially this one has 20-minute and 5-minute regular hop additions, as well as a hop stand addition, which we will come to shortly. Let's now take a closer look at each of these hops from within the hop control software. Firstly, we have New Zealand hop Motueka shown here in orange. As you can see, this is very citrus, with a high level of tropical fruit, along with some grassy and herbal effects. This hop is rather unique with its refreshing and zesty flavouring, which brings delicious fresh tropical lime to the party as part of its tropical mix. Then we have our very familiar American hop friend Centennial, which, as you can see from this chart in blue, brings high levels of citrus, resin, pine and floral elements, along with some berry and spice. Often considered to be super cascade, this hop is a great addition to any IPA. Then lastly, also featured in this recipe is the popular American hop Simcoe, shown in this chart in green. This hop offers strong resin, pine and floral levels, along with a good level of tropical fruit, berry and spice. I especially enjoy the notes of apricot and berry from this hop. Certainly when I first saw this recipe I was intrigued to the overall flavourings that would result, but could see straight away that this was going to be very refreshing with its high levels of citrus along with an array of other qualities that should make this one very interesting. More on this later within the tasting section. After the boil additions, it was then time to break out my immersion chiller for a quick cool down to the hop stand temperature of 82 degrees Celsius and 180 degrees Fahrenheit. With this jaded brewing chiller and some stirring, as you can see here, the cooling was completed from boiling point to hop stand temperature in less than 1 minute, which is certainly nicely time saving. You can use this technique with any type of immersion chiller, but do note that this particular type is especially fast due to its design. After the cooling, I then removed the chiller and added the hop stand additions. I then spent a little time giving the hops a really good stir to draw those vital hop oils out and the vegetable debris to drop to the bottom of the brewing system. The Brewzilla Gen 4 I'm using for this brew has its own very good false bottom, but if you are using a brewing system without a false bottom, that has for example a bazooka filter, then I would strongly suggest that you perform a full whirlpool here to avoid potential clogging. This can be an extended version of what I am doing here, but it is way easier and faster to use a drill and paddle rather than doing it manually, of course. To continue cooling and transfer at the same time, I used a counterflow chiller, which I had recirculating like this for a few minutes until the temperature was down to yeast pitching levels. I then added some water to the bottom of the fermenter before actually adding the recipe's yeast, which is of course Pomona. Because this was filmed before Pomona's released, I am using these pre-release 11-gram sample pouches that Lallemand kindly provided for me. Once the yeast was pitched, I then spent some time rehydrating the yeast with the warp flow, as you can see me doing here. This will get everything off to a really good head start. The recommended fermentation temperature for this recipe with Pomona yeast is 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. If you are looking for more Pomona information, then after this video check out the 2 videos on my channel as shown on screen now. The first video gives a great deal of information about Pomona, and the second offers a full comparison between Pomona and Verdant IPA yeast. The very next step is concerning the dry hop additions, which are now shown on screen. Add your dry hops when you are between 5 to 10 gravity points away from your predicted final gravity. I have tried all methods of dry hopping, but frankly nothing so far has had as good results, and there is no need to buy a book either. The very most important thing here is to keep things clean and sanitary, so here is a guide to doing that in a way that has never failed me so far in hundreds of brews. In this example I'm going to use a hop sock, but the procedure is similar with other container types. This starts with boiling the bag. I strongly recommend doing this no matter if the bag has been previously used and cleaned, or if it's a brand new one straight out of the packaging. I then add this bag into a clean container and add sanitizer as a further safeguard. This will be the same container that I used to load the hops into. After this point I then wash and sanitize my hands, and this is repeated if I need to touch the bag after touching anything that is not clean and sanitary. These are very important steps to avoid contamination, which is all too common when it comes to homebrewers making IPAs because of this step. I then carefully add the dry hops with the bag lining the container, being sure that nothing touches the bag except for the hops. Once you have loaded all of your hops into the bag, then be sure to tie a nice strong knot to keep all of the hops contained. This loosely fitting hop bag, so there is room to expand, can now be added into your fermenter. In terms of contact time, 3 days is usually going to be plenty, but 5 days is fine too. I would avoid times more than a week to avoid grassy off flavours though. Let's now take a look at the finished beer from this brew, starting with the pour, and after this I will give you my tasting notes. As you can see here, the pour is very hazy, light golden colour, but once in the glass the end beer is a sunburst yet hazy orange colour, just as you would expect for this style. This beer is totally in its natural state and no attempts have been made to clear the beer at all, which is in keeping with this hazy IPA beer style. Naturally this is your choice though. This beer has been under 12 psi of pressure, which is 0.83 bars, and I'm also using this pressure for serving too. The example you see here is at around the 5-week point from kegging, and that's conditioned flavour-wise very nicely in this time, though like quite a few hoppy beers it was also very good fresh. Let's now go through my tasting notes, starting with aroma. The aroma here is very citrus with some pine and resinous features with a background of tropical fruit. Flavour. On entry this is very citrus and pine with tropical fruit, which is generally led by pineapple, lime and orange in the middle. There is a clear presence of resin throughout. The finish is grapefruit-like and very refreshing, which acts as a fast lure for you to continue. As you explore further down the glass, new flavours make themselves known that are tropical and berry. Here are some of my notes. I have to say that I really find this hop pairing of Centennial, Moto Acura and Simcoe to be a real winner. Moto Acura is certainly a hop that I need to do much more of my own pairing experimentation with. However, the power of Pomona yeast has really added a very nice array of extra tropical fruit flavours here that this beer has really been awakened by. My final impression is that this recipe offers a very tropical hazy IPA that offers some additional enhancements from both the Pomona yeast and the use of New Zealand hops alongside American hops that really make it sing. So there you have it. My thanks go out to Lallemand for sharing this awesome recipe with me so that I can share it to you, my viewers. Do let myself and the community know what you think of this video, and then later on, once you have brewed this recipe, your own tasting notes and thoughts. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!